record. Oh, okay. Got it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Before we introduce ourselves, I would just like to do a quick land acknowledgement. So I'm based in Ottawa, so I'll just be acknowledging that we are located on traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin peoples. They've inhabited and cared for these lands long before today, and we would like to just take a moment to show our gratitude and respect to them and to the land that provides for all of us. As future landscape architects, we embrace the responsibility to help ensure that the future generations of land stewards are respectful and grateful for the bounty of this land on which we all live, work, play, and study. So my name is Jenny Trin. I am the Senior Associate Representative on OALA Council. Like I mentioned, I am based in Ottawa, and I also have L.A.R.E here. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Jenny. My name is L.A.R.E. I'm based in Toronto. I'm the Junior Associate Members Rep with the OALA. And I currently work for Studio TLA, formerly known as Terraplan Landscape Architects. And thank you all for joining us on a Saturday morning.
I would also like to just quickly acknowledge that my term as Senior Associate Rep is ending in, I believe, April. So after that, L.A.R.E will become your Senior Associate Rep, and we will have a new Junior Rep. So if you're interested in that position, I don't know, Ingrid, do you know when those nominations go out?
They'll go out at the end of February, and we email all associate members. So only associate members of the OALA, there are about 400 in total, vote. But everybody is encouraged to vote for somebody that will work with L.A.R.E to represent you on council. And certainly in the last 4 or 5 years, the added role has really been to support associates in this way, just like L.A.R.E and Jenny now on helping with the Google study group and providing these webinars as well. So you should see an email. There'll probably be something on the website. If you don't see anything, feel free to email us. It's mainly our, it'll come out from our member services administrator, Angie Anselmo, but you can email anybody in the office if you haven't seen the voting invite. And then we'll announce the winner at the AGM, which you're welcome to come to as well. And that's on April 27th from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. And it's on Zoom actually, and it's all online.
Great, thank you, Ingrid. So if you do want to learn more about the role, feel free to contact me and L.A.R.E. L.A.R.E is great to work with, so you'll be in good hands working with her as associate rep. So there's a lot to cover today. So we're going to try and cover everything within the allotted time. Of course, if you have questions, please feel free. I think there's a Q&A or a chat function where you can put in your questions, and we'll also leave time at the end as well. Like if you want to turn on your camera and just say your question, that's also great. So before we get started, we just want to quickly flag that per L.A.R.E policies, we're not able to answer any questions pertaining to contents we've seen on the exam. So thank you for your understanding on that. Okay, so those of you that have attended these sessions before or have already written sections of the exams, you will be aware of these changes. But for those of you who are just starting the process of writing the exams, L.A.R.E implemented a number of changes that have been in place since last year. We've moved to a new testing partner named PSI. All 4 sections of the exam are available to write online. So if you would prefer not to go to an in-person testing center, you can choose to write online. There's also no longer physical whiteboards or calculators. Those are all functions that are built into the exam software. Breaks during the exam are now permitted. However, the clock does not stop running if you take a break, and any questions that you have seen prior to your break, you will no longer be able to access after returning from your break. So that means you have to make sure that you finish all of those questions and complete your answers before taking your break. And finally, you can find the full updated candidate agreement on L.A.R.E's website. It's also included in the L.A.R.E orientation guide, which has been updated this month or last month. So please make sure that you're looking at the 2023 version of the orientation guide. So signing up for the exam, we'll walk everyone through how to do so. So when you go onto L.A.R.E's website, you'll see at the top, sign in or create new user. If you've never written an exam before, then you will create a new user. If you've already created an account, then you'll simply sign in. Once you sign in and you are ready to register for the exam, you'll come to this page, begin the registration process with L.A.R.E. And if you scroll down to number 3, there's a button at the bottom that says register for the exam. Once you click that button, you'll be brought to this page. So you'll just click start registration. Once you move on to the second box that's circled, select jurisdiction just means to select your province or territory. So just make sure to check your location that you're registered under. You'll see there's also there's American states as well. So just make sure, I believe the provinces are towards the bottom, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, as I mentioned, the orientation guide is updated, so please make sure to use the most updated one. The orientation guide is actually a good place to start your studying because it does have outlines for all 4 exams, and it also contains some materials for sections 3 and especially section 4, and it will also cover all of the topics that we're discussing today. So once you have registered for the L.A.R.E, you can write more than 1 section per exam window. So if you want, a lot of people tend to write sections 2 and 3 together, sections 1 and 4 together. Ultimately, it's up to you if you want to write more than 1 section and which ones. So after you've selected which sections you want to write, you'll be brought to this page and you'll click here to schedule your exam appointments. It will bring you to the PSI website directly. You don't need to log in again or do anything like that. And this is when you schedule your actual exam. So you can see at the top of the page, it shows you which exams you're eligible for, and those are the ones that you just selected in the previous page when you were still on L.A.R.E's website. So in this case, this person has elected to write sections 1 and 3. You'll see at the bottom that person did not register for sections 2 and 4, and that's why they are not eligible to schedule those exams. So you'll do one at a time. So say we start with section 1, you can click on continue booking. You'll just make sure that your email is correct. If you need any testing accommodations, you can request here, and you can also email L.A.R.E directly, and you can CC your provincial or territorial administrative or registrar person, so they can help support you in getting your accommodations. So When you come to this page, you will decide if you want to register to write in person or to register online. It tells you what information you need. It is generally the same for both proof of identity, exam booking confirmation, and then it just tells you, depending on what your preference is for writing exams, which type of exam taking method might be suited best for you. So we've now split the screen into two so you can see what it looks like if you've chosen to do online proctoring or if you've chosen to go right in person. So you can see for online proctoring, you just have to make sure that you select the correct country and the correct time zone. That is really important. Some people have chosen the wrong time zone before, so please be careful of that. If you are choosing to write on site, then you will start by searching up your nearest testing center. So you can put in the postal code, your city, and then you can also select a search radius in miles or kilometers. So depending on how far you are willing to travel to go write your exam in person. So this is what it looks like if you are looking for in person. That shouldn't say online, that should be in-person proctoring, so sorry about that. You can see once you've put in your location, it'll show you on a map as well as in the list below what the locations are available based on what you searched. Once you select your location, or in the case of online proctoring, once you've confirmed your time zone, you'll be brought to the calendar page and you'll be able to see which dates and times are available to write your exam. So you can select the date and time that suits you best. And then you will be brought to this page. Just double check that it's the correct exam section, the correct date, the correct time and time zone, and make sure you check off what's circled in red here, agreeing to the company's conditions of use and privacy notice. You can see that you're not charged anything, and that's because you already paid for the exam when you were still on L.A.R.E's website. Also, make sure to check at the bottom here if you didn't check at the top. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but you can see that it has the same sentence at the bottom, agreeing to the company's conditions of use and privacy notice. Once you've checked all of that, you can confirm and you're ready to go. You have your exam booked. If you did book more than one section, then you can just click book another test, and then you'll be brought back to the beginning window that I showed earlier. If you're only writing one section, then you can just press done, and then you should receive confirmation by email. If you want to go back and change the date and time, you can go back to the PSI page. You'll see listed under bookings which sections that you've already registered for. You can click on there and then you can cancel, reschedule, whatever you need to do for your booking. So as I mentioned earlier, if you are having issues with booking, if there's not a testing center near you, if you require accommodations, or if you have any other issues, basically, you can contact L.A.R.E. Their email is listed on the screen. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also CC your jurisdiction administrator or registrar. When you email them, make sure to include the section you'd like to write, your preferred testing location if you are writing in person, or if it's a technical issue, then a screenshot is always helpful for them. So I'm going to quickly run through online proctoring. So this is a new option that L.A.R.E has provided for the past year. Many people have elected to take this option, and because of that, we wanted to flag some things to consider if you do want to write online. So as I previously mentioned, breaks are permitted, which is great. I think with the old system, breaks were not permitted for writing online. If you are thinking of writing online, there are a couple of things to consider. You must have a private room with a door that is closable, and also your space where you're writing your exam must be cleared. Before you start your exam, your proctor will ask to scan the room that you're writing in. So please make sure to tidy up beforehand. Any notes or anything related to the exam should not be in the room with you. There is a system check that they request that you do prior to your exam, just to make sure that the device you're using will be able to hold up the exam software throughout your exam. We've had members mention that they want to write on their work devices, and L.A.R.E recommends that you don't write on a work device because oftentimes offices will have certain firewall settings that will cause problems for the exam software. So please be mindful of that. If you do want to work on if you do want to write on a work advice, I suggest maybe speaking to your employer about that, and also perhaps L.A.R.E if they have a way to help with that. One thing I wouldn't have thought of myself, but lots of people mentioned, was to close your blinds, because the exams are several hours long. So the sun is moving, and sometimes it ends up being quite a distraction for people. So close your blinds if you do write in a room with a window. And then the last thing that L.A.R.E does not recommend is writing on a tablet. I think the exam software is just not designed for tablets. So ideally you're writing on a laptop or a desktop. So upcoming exam periods, the next one is April 3rd to 16th, and registration is now open. The deadline to cancel / to register is March 27th. Then we have the next section, which is from July 31st to August 13th. And this is the last window for you to write sections 1, 2, and 3 before the new blueprint kicks in for December 2023. That's December this year. You can also write section 4 during August. However, L.A.R.E has opened up one final window to write only section 4 in October. More details will be announced for that, and we will talk about how you may be eligible to write certain sections during certain windows, because L.A.R.E has put requirements in for candidates to be eligible to write sections 1 and 4 during the August and October windows. Then the last window this year is December 4th to 17th, and that is when the new blueprint takes effect. So just to quickly go over some of the biggest changes for the new blueprint, which again is effective starting December window. Some content will be shifting between exams based on a job task analysis that L.A.R.E conducted about a year and a half ago. Basically, they surveyed practicing landscape architects across North America to make sure that L.A.R.E is testing on the most up-to-date practices that landscape architects actually use. Based on their findings, they had elected to shift around some of the exam content, which I'll go over more in one of the next slides. Second, all sections will now utilize an advanced item type. And for those who aren't familiar with what that is, there are 4 types of questions that you may encounter on an exam. So one is multiple choice, which is just one response. One is multiple response, which is more than one response. Then there's the drag and drop. So these currently are only used on sections 3 and 4, where you drag an element that is provided and you drop it onto a plan, a section, or some other type of graphic that pertains to the question. And then the 4th type of question is a hotspot, and you'll select an area on the graphic provided to you on the exam. So currently sections 1 and 2 only use multiple choice or multiple response questions, and sections 3 and 4 use all 4 types of questions that I just mentioned. With the new blueprint, all sections will utilize all 4 of these types of questions. The next change is that all sections will be comparable in length and cost. You'll see later in the presentation, we go over briefly how long each exam is. Section 4, I believe, is 4 hours, if I'm not mistaken, while section 2, I believe, is only 2.5. So that's an hour and a half difference right there. Or yes, that's right. So CLARB has confirmed that all exams in the new blueprint will be approximately 3 hours in length. They don't have a number for cost yet, so that is to be announced. Finally, the last major change is that they will be providing feedback by subdomain. So in the past, candidates who have not been successful in passing a section have voiced that they wish that they could have feedback on perhaps which topics or which areas of study they need to focus more on. And CLARB has taken that into consideration, and they will now be providing more detailed feedback on which sections or which topics of a given exam you did well or not so well on. So to elaborate more on why and how the blueprint is changing, we'll start with the 3 on the right-hand side. So you can see the titles with numbers 2, 3, and 4. Those are the current blueprint. So you'll often hear people reference the exam sections by number, and you can see in the column on the right-hand side, the number is being removed. And this is to remove confusion for candidates who think that they have to write the exams in order. So you can see that section 2, inventory and analysis, will become inventory, analysis, and project management. Section 3, design, is going to become planning and design. Section 4, grading, drainage, and construction documentation, is going to become grading, drainage, and stormwater management. So really, these 3, if you have already written a section, when the new blueprint kicks in, you will be credited the new equivalent of that section. Where the changes do impact candidates primarily are, if we move to the left-hand side of the screen, is sections 1 and 4. Parts of those exams are being combined and being turned into construction documentation and administration. So basically what that means is that the blueprint changes really only impact candidates who have written section 1 or section 4, but not the other. But especially those who have written section 1, but not section 4. And CLARB has implemented that if you don't complete section 4 before December 2023, then you will have to write the new sections of 1 and 4. So you would have to write the section called construction documentation and administration, and you would also have to write grading, drainage, and stormwater management. So just to make it really clear, this really primarily impacts those who have written section 1, but not section 4. If you are in that boat, I would strongly suggest you focus on passing section 4. If you still have sections 2 and 3, when the new blueprint kicks in, that really doesn't change anything. They are equivalent, as you can see on the screen. However, it's sections 1 and 4 that are really changing. So if you have written section 1 but not section 4, we strongly encourage you to focus on passing section 4 before December 2023. CLARB does also recommend those who have written section 1, those who have written section 4, but not section 1, to also complete section 1 before December 2023, because some of the content for these two sections is being shifted around and moved in, being combined into one section. By completing both sections before December 2023, you will be avoiding essentially having to write a 5th exam, if you want to look at it that way. So as I mentioned, August 2023 is the last exam period for you to write sections 1, 2, and 3. Section 4 is also available to write during this time. However, you may be eligible to have one last shot at it in October. However, please make note of this. If you are looking to write section 1 in August, you're only eligible to write section 1 during this exam window if you have already passed section 4, or if you are registered for section 4 in the same exam window. So you've either already written and passed section 4, or you intend on writing both sections 1 and 4 in August, which personally I would encourage you not to do that. That is risky. If you can write either section well before, basically in the upcoming exam period, April, then I would suggest not leaving it to the last minute, basically, because there's always a possibility that you find you don't have enough time to study for both. Maybe you don't feel as prepared if you're attempting to write both in the same exam window. So to reduce risk, try not to write them both in August. For the October exam period, this is your final shot at writing section 4. Only section 4 is available to write in October. So August is your last shot at writing 1, 2, and 3. You're only eligible to write section 4 in October if you have already passed section 1. And this is because L.A.R.E doesn't want you to start writing section 4 but right before the blueprint change, basically, because there's always a possibility that you might not be successful, and if you happen to fail, then you will end up having to write an extra exam, as I explained earlier. So that's why L.A.R.E has these restrictions in place. If you are trying to write section 4 in August, and you're not sure if you passed or not, the August exam results will be released prior to registration for the October window, so by September. So L.A.R.E is going to try to make sure that you have as much notice as possible if you do happen to fail section 4 in August. That way you can start preparing ASAP and register for the October window. Okay, so there's more. So as I mentioned, the new blueprint kicks in December of this year. L.A.R.E is offering the chance to write the new blueprint construction documentation and administration exam for free if you qualify. And I'm going to lay out the requirements to qualify now, but L.A.R.E did say that if you do qualify, they will also contact you personally. So this is just so you're aware, but also L.A.R.E will reach out to you themselves if you are eligible for this. So to qualify for a free exam attempt for specifically construction documentation and administration, it won't be eligible for any other section. You have to have passed section 1 of the L.A.R.E before October 2022, because that's when all of these blueprint changes were first announced. And you have to have attempted to complete section 4 during the exam transition. So basically from October 2022 onwards. you don't have to have passed, because obviously then you wouldn't be you wouldn't need this exam attempt. But if you have registered and attempted to write it and you happen to fail between December 2022 and October 2023, then you will be eligible to write construction documentation and administration for free in either December 2023 or April 2024. So they won't let you hold off on it. If for whatever reason you do land in this situation and you cannot take this free attempt in December 2023 or April 2024, then I would suggest contacting L.A.R.E and hopefully they can arrange something for you. Okay, so that was a lot of information. If you do want to reference all this info at a later date, everything is available on L.A.R.E's website. You can check out the QR codes that are on the screen. You can also reference this recording at a later date if you want, but it might be more direct just to go to L.A.R.E's website. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Ingrid, Lyell, I don't know if you agree, but maybe this would be a good time to just give a couple minutes pause and see if anyone has questions about the new blueprint and the transition before we move on to exam content itself.
Sure, if anybody has any questions, do you want to raise your hand?
Great, and I would say it was tons. Thank you, Jenny, for explaining it much more clearly than I feel I have. But I would add the one caveat too is that all of that information, the hope is that it won't apply to anybody. That especially that idea of makeup, it's the idea that L.A.R.E wants to encourage people to take that fourth exam. But if you're really worried to say, what if I take it and I don't pass? They're really saying they've got some, like, as much of a safety net as they can. The hope is that everybody passes, but for those very few that might not, they've put that October in and then that potential to write a free one to make up for that afterwards. But we're really hoping that that will not be needed.
Yes, and just to also flag, I know someone earlier had introduced themselves and said that they were just starting to write the exams. If you have not written any exams yet, then I would recommend starting with either section 2 or section 3 and just waiting for the new blueprint to start before you attempt sections 1 and 4. If you are fresh into the L.A.R.E process and you attempt either section 1 and 4 now, it's pretty risky. You're not leaving yourself a lot of time to get both of them done before December 2023. So that's what I would recommend. If you've already written either section 2 or 3, then I would write the other and wait for the new blueprint. If you've already written section 1, as I mentioned, try to get section 4 done before the new blueprint. If you've written section 4 and you need to get section 1 done, try to get that done before the new blueprint. I'm not seeing any questions, unless I'm not sure if I can see the screen fully because I'm sharing the screen. Do you see anything, Lyell?
Ingrid's answering some in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I can't see the chat. So are there any that we want to read out for everyone, or would you like to move on?
If you want, the one person just wanted to reconfirm that free attempt option December 2023 or April 2024 would be with the new exam format, and that's correct. Yeah,
that is correct. It is for the new exam format, which is called Construction Documentation and Administration. That is the only one they're offering for free, not any of the other sections. Once December 2023 kicks in, the current blueprint is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So if you do end up being eligible for the free attempt, it's only for construction documentation and administration.
Okay, shall we move on to the exam content unless anybody else has any questions? Good to go.
Yes.
Right, so section 1, as it's called now, is for project and construction management, and it's broken down into the following topics: project management, bidding, construction, and maintenance. And in the next slide, you'll see how each of these topics that I mentioned are broken down into more detailed topics. And all these charts that we're going to share for sections 1 to 4 are available in the orientation guide that Jenny mentioned earlier in the presentation. So you don't need to screenshot or do anything with this. It is available for you. In this section, our tip would be to take your time in reading each question carefully several times to figure out what they're really asking. There's a heavy weight on who does what in a typical project in this exam content, meaning the roles of the client, consultants, sub-consultants, and also process timeline, meaning when certain activities of a project are executed or expected to be implemented in each phase. And in this section, you're expected to demonstrate your knowledge on how to develop contracts, how to develop RFPs or RFQs, project scopes, and budget. You're expected to know how to facilitate meetings and coordination with other consultants, and how to obtain permits, how to conduct cost estimates, how the bidding process works, how to respond to RFIs, how to make change orders and put together punch lists, how to prepare as-built record drawings and conduct project closeout, among other topics. There is a recommended L.A.R.E reading list on the next slide that you'll see, and it includes these 4 main titles as well as additional resources if you are so inclined to, fill yourself up with as many resources as you can. This section is more knowledge-based, so it could be beneficial for you to make flashcards to remember the key terms relating to each of the legal matters that are covered in this exam. There's different types of bonds, types of schedules, types of contracts, among other things. Our tip for you is that you don't necessarily need to read each book cover to cover, as it's a lot of information to take in. It would really help if you look at the index of each of these books and cross-reference it with the topics that are listed in the exam chart breakdown in the orientation guide. Because there will be a lot of things in these books that you don't necessarily need to cover. And there's a lot of common grounds between each book. So again, don't read it cover to cover. Just make sure you're focusing on the content that you know is going to be covered in the exam. That will really help you sort of distill the book's content into more manageable chapters and sections. The construction contracts book that's highlighted in pink is normally regarded as the primary textbook for the exam. The books highlighted in pink, these 2 are the ones that Jenny read in preparation for this exam. And as mentioned earlier, listed below are some recommended additional resources that can help you create a more solid foundation in case you don't have much experience doing construction admin and project management, and for whatever reason, choose to start with section 1. So if in case you're a fresh graduate and you decide to start with section 1, even though, as you heard earlier in the presentation, it's not recommended to do that right now, it could be a good idea to speak to your coworkers and managers about their professional experience and try to get some sort of tips from them, but please remain mindful that you cannot ask them specific questions about the exam, as the L.A.R.E rule that we started the presentation with earlier does apply to anybody who has sat for the exam, meaning they cannot disclose any exam content or questions that they've seen. So on the next slide, we've included a link for you for a prep session, which was recorded in 2020, if you want to explore additional resources on this section. Moving on to section 2, inventory and analysis. This exam is broken down into the following topics: site inventory, physical analysis, and contextual analysis. And similar to section 1, this section has a chart breakdown that you'll see on the next slide, which has the different topics that would be covered in this exam. This section has a lot of information to study, with general questions relating to soils, landforms, different types of maps, surveys. And it's important to note in this section the difference between inventory and analysis, and how to interpret different layers of information, for example, hydrology, vegetation, topography, and soils. Similarly, you have a reading list for this section. And it's a knowledge-based exam, and some test takers have found it to be the more suitable one to take right out of school. It has a lot of reading material as well, so it's advisable to focus on general terms and topics. And again, as mentioned before, cross-reference the index with the exam chart breakdown. The books highlighted in pink generally reference Design with Nature quite a bit. So it's advisable that you start with these three. And if you still feel like you have gaps in the knowledge, you can refer back to Design with Nature. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see, oh, sorry, I'll hand it over to you, Jenny, for section 3.
Thanks, Lyal. So section 3 covers design. You can see on the screen the exam breakdown. So 9% of the exam will be about the stakeholder process, 45% about master planning, and 46% about site design. Again, this is the exam breakdown. All of the three main sections I just mentioned are broken down in much more detail here. Again, you can find this on the orientation guide. And as Lyal mentioned earlier, and I think this tip applies for all 4 sections of the exam, it's a good idea when you're starting to prepare your readings, which textbooks you'd like to focus on first, to basically open the index or the table of contents and cross-reference with this chart to see which books cover the most number of topics, and to start with those just to be more efficient with your time. Again, the reading list is available on L.A.R.E's website. So this one, once again, has an extended reading list. The ones highlighted in pink are the ones I personally found useful. However, I've spoken to lots of other members who have studied for/written section 3, and I think it really depends on how comfortable you are with the topics on this exam. What I've heard a lot of people say is that the time savers standards for landscape architecture and the landscape architectural graphic standards textbooks are pretty similar. So based on that, I would suggest starting with reading only one of the 2. And if you find that you're missing information, then you could always reference the other one. But generally, I have heard from many members that there's no need to actually fully read both of them. For time savers standards, there's a lot of good content in there. I find that it's both too detailed in some topics and not detailed enough in other topics. So when it comes to, particularly if we reference like the master planning section of this exam, I find Site Planning and Design Handbook and Planning and Urban Design standards to be very helpful to cover these types of topics. So I would suggest reading those ones, and they have great graphics that you can reference as well, which of course we're all, I think most of us are fairly visual when it comes to learning, so graphics are always really helpful. Other additional resources I listed below, the dimensions of parking, and urban street design guide. That one, the urban street design guide, I think is really excellent. If you are not very familiar with streetscape design, road design, bike lane, pedestrian, risk assessment with vehicular traffic, that resource is really good. The graphics, again, are also excellent, so I highly recommend that one. Another thing that Lyal mentioned, flashcards. Funnily enough, I used flashcards for all 4 exams, and I think it depends on what kind of studier you are, but for me, I did actually find flashcards to still be helpful for sections 3 and 4. So for section 4, grading, drainage, and construction documentation, you can see the breakdown is 20% site preparation plans, 40% general plans and details, 25% specialty plans, and 15% specifications. So to further break down, if you have experience working for a firm, if you have experience in preparing contract documents, I think that can to some extent be very helpful for this exam, especially when it comes to drawing standards, how each plan is prepared, generally what goes on each plan. However, I would like to flag that oftentimes what L.A.R.E considers is appropriate for a certain plan, it doesn't necessarily align with what we practice in real life. Oftentimes we tailor drawings to the specific project, whereas in L.A.R.E.'s world, they're functioning more in the ideal world. So in the ideal world, what goes on a demo plan doesn't necessarily always line up with what we actually put on demo plans in real life. So when you're going through the readings, just be mindful of that. Yes, that is one thing that I noticed personally when I was studying and when I was taking practice exams. That was a discrepancy that I personally noticed. I'm not sure if anyone who's written this exam has already has also noticed that. So to move on to the reading list, you'll notice I mentioned earlier that a lot of candidates, when they do want to take more than one section at a time, they often group sections 2 and 3 or 1 and 4. However, you'll see that sections 3 and sections 4 have a lot of similar readings. So if you want to group sections 3 and 4, that might also be an option for you if you think that's feasible for you. You'll see time saver standards and landscape architectural graphic standards, and then the sustainable sites handbook are the same. The one that I would like to flag to you here is site engineering for landscape architects. That one is especially great if you need to brush up on your grading, or if you in general are just not very comfortable with grading. They have a lot of practice questions in that textbook, which I think are really helpful. So I would also really suggest reading that one. If you've already studied for section 3 and you read time saver standards, earlier I mentioned that in some topics, this textbook is almost too detailed. That's where those details are useful, is for section 4 actually. So that one is really good for more technical construction type information. So I would recommend those two readings primarily. But I also found that particularly for section 4 and section 1, actually, I had to do a lot of my own Googling. For section 1, it's very jargon heavy. Lyle mentioned that there's a lot of legal terms, a lot of the process of landscape architecture that you don't necessarily learn as much in school, like the bidding process. That's where I had to Google quite a bit. And it's similar for section 4. There's a lot more technical information that perhaps you don't have a lot of experience with through work, or maybe you didn't learn about in school. That's where I would say don't be afraid to Google things further and look for graphics, look for details on the internet, and try to expose yourself to a good variety of details and graphics for this exam.
Just as a note, Ingrid, does the OALA still provide the library for members to check out these resources for a certain number of weeks, or?
Yes, we do. The contact person in the office is our coordinator, Sherry. And so her email is just coordinator@oala.ca. And that we're in the office always at least 3 days a week. We're still working a bit hybrid, but if you let us know in advance, we work to be there for you. You want us there because now the the front door of the building is locked, so we have to be there to buzz you in. But you can also ask us to send the books to you. We just ask you to then pay to or either drop them off or pay to mail them back. But we mail them to you for free. And there are one or two books that are too big. They just don't fit in the mailbox, and they go beyond it. I think it's one of the graphic standards, the old one. But so there are a few like that, but you can borrow up to 2 at a time for 3 weeks. If you still need them afterwards, you can contact Sherry. If nobody else has asked for them, she will renew that for you for another 3 weeks, but we'll ask you to return them if there's somebody else waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Lyle. It can add up quickly if you're looking to buy these textbooks. I think also we'll mention later more about how to get connected with study groups if you are looking to study with other people, but perhaps if you have a study group, maybe you can cost share the textbooks. Maybe each person could be responsible for buying a textbook, and that way you don't all have to have a copy of Time Savers. But of course, if you prefer to have your own copy, then by all means. So the last thing I'd like to point out for section 4 is that there is a prep session webinar that was recorded in July 2021, hosted by BCS L.A. members. I would say if you are starting to study for section 4, this webinar is really well done. John goes through every section of this breakdown: demolition plan, existing conditions plan, etc. And he basically tells you what the key topics to study and what the key strategies are to keep in mind for each topic, basically, which I think it was very helpful. And I would go back and watch that. I think I watched it at least twice while I was studying for this. So I highly recommend this personally. And if anyone else on the call has watched this before and found it helpful, please feel free to let us know. So I'll pass it off to Lyle to break down the exam structure.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'll just circle back to what you mentioned earlier about the new blueprint, in the sense that all the sections will be more comparable in time and cost, but for now, this is how they are structured. Section 1 is a 3 hours seating time and 2.5 writing. You have 85 multiple choice, multiple response questions, and 15 pre-test items. So pre-test items are basically all exams have a specific number of pre-test items that will not be scored, and they will not have an impact on your results. And this is commonly done by L.A.R.E to evaluate these pre-test questions for potential use in future exams. And pre-test items are randomly placed throughout the exam. And as you're sitting for the exam, you won't be able to identify which are pre-test and which are normal questions, but they are included. Section 2 has a 2.5 hour seat time and 2 hour writing time, with 70 multiple choice or multiple response questions and 10 pre-test. Section 3 is a 4 hour seat time and 3.5 writing time, with 85 multiple choice, multiple response, drag and drop, hotspot, and 15 pre-test. Again, I'm going to circle back to what Jenny mentioned earlier, is that all the exams will have the ATI question type. And then section 4 is the longest, with 4.5 hour seat time, 4 hour writing time, 105 multiple choice, multiple response, drag and drop, and hotspot. And we have included a link for you for a video walkthrough of the exam structure provided by L.A.R.E. Have I missed anything, Jenny? Okay. Moving on to some study tips. The best place that we find is a good place for you to start is your own jurisdiction's association website. They're always very useful and helpful. And as you can see, Ingrid is even with us on a Saturday morning for this webinar. She is our OALA registrar, and we're very lucky to have her. Again, we circle back to flashcards. They're a really great way for you to retain key terms and concepts, and writing in your own words is a great way to retain information. again, cross-referencing the index topics with the exam breakdowns. We cannot reiterate that enough. And sometimes, like Jenny mentioned, you just need to Google some things or ask a coworker or refer back to the Google study group, which we're going to include a link to shortly. It's always good to talk to people, and there are surely common ground in some areas that people have found challenging. And then while reading the questions of the exam, make sure that you're looking for keywords such as does or does not. I'm an anxious test taker, and when my mind is anxious or tense, I may like skip over some keywords. So read each question 2 or 3 times, but keep, of course, an eye on your timer. And don't just rely on other people's notes. You will find a lot of online resources. However, you have to be mindful that the information may be outdated or inaccurate even in some cases. So making your own notes and flashcards will help you understand and learn the material better. It is challenging if you've been in the professional world for a good number of years to go back and be in like student exam mode, but it is important for everybody to get their registration. And another test taker's tip is to write down the topics of the questions that you believe you may have gotten wrong and note them down and focus on them more for your next exam attempt. And on the next slide, we've included some test taking tips for the day of. Pace yourself and monitor your timer. Like Jenny mentioned, there are breaks allowed, but it does subtract time out of your timer. And then review general strategies for multiple choice test taking. For example, going through the potential list of answers and eliminate some that you know are no way correct. Read questions carefully. Again, look for your keywords and try to determine exactly what the question is asking. Going back to L.A.R.E, they have very specific regulations and things that may not be commonly practiced. For example, just in Ontario, all the different municipalities have certain different standards, and it can get a little bit confusing. If you go back to L.A.R.E and see that their standards are a little bit different, you have to sort of just focus on what you know they want the right answer to be. Provide comments for questions that you feel are confusing or misleading or have multiple potential correct answers. And Jenny mentioned that earlier is to L.A.R.E does provide you the opportunity to test your devices, but make sure that the day of that your Wi-Fi is working properly, you don't have an outage or anything like that. And I think that's all the tips that we have for you for now. I think Jenny is going to cover the L.A.R.E prep courses that are available to you.
Thanks, Layal. So more and more we're finding people are looking or seeking out prep courses or study guides for the exams, and more they are becoming available. So the first one we'd like to touch on is L.A.R.E Prep. They offer 2 practice exams per section that can be purchased. They are in USD, so the prices I hope those are updated. They should be updated, but if not, the updated prices are on their website. So sections 1 and 2 practice exams are $21.99 USD. Sections 3 and 4 practice exams are $27.99 USD. And they are basically the closest you can get to writing the real exam. They word things the way L.A.R.E would word them. They have all 4, they break down, let me step back, let's see. For each section, they match the writing time. They also match the number of questions that the real exam would have, and they also use the same types of questions that each exam would have. So it's basically a simulation of the real exam. So in that sense, to get your mind into exam writing mode, I think these are really good. What I personally do is I'll buy one of the 2 sections closer to the beginning of me starting to study, and I'll just take it right away just to gauge like how well would I do if I wrote the exam today. And what's really another great thing about these exams, these practice exams, I should say, is that it breaks down an explanation of every question to you, why the correct answer was correct, why the other options are not correct or less correct than the best answer. And honestly, those notes I would then incorporate into my own study notes. I think they're really useful. Then later, like maybe 2 weeks and a month out from my exam date, I'll take the second practice exam or retake the first one, and then see if I've hopefully improved my score since the first time I took it. So that's my personal strategy. They also recently released study guides for sections 1, 2, and 3. I can't vouch for those because I've never used them. But if anyone in the call has purchased and used them for an exam, please feel free to share your thoughts on them. They are also paid, so I don't have the prices up here, unfortunately, and you have 90 days of access to that material. Next is another one that is fairly well known, SGLA, Sarah Gronquist. She is a landscape architect practicing in California, and she runs these very extensive, detailed courses for each exam. You can see dates up on the screen. Those are outdated. Never mind, don't look at those. Sorry, I should have updated those. But on her website, she'll have the most updated dates and times for her prep classes. They typically occur throughout the weekend, so a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I believe it's something like 8 to 4 p.m. So it is a bit of a commitment. However, with that, you get basically a live webinar class for 3 days. You get to interact with her and other people in the class directly. There's tons of material that she provides. I didn't attend her course, but I bought her book for section 3, and it was unbelievable how much material she had in there. You could probably get away with studying only that book if you really wanted to. She also provides a lot of practice questions, which I personally found really useful for section 3 because it's more application based than knowledge based. She's also really responsive by email. I emailed her multiple times about topics I wasn't clear on, or questions, practice questions that I had done and gotten wrong and wanted her feedback on. She's very responsive. And for each section or cohort, I should say, she helps form study groups grouped by time zones. So I was able to form a study group with people throughout the Eastern Coast in Canada and the US. And that was really helpful because you can meet, discuss different topics. You can also hear different perspectives from people. Like I learned a bit about how certain regulations function in New York State, which was really interesting. And you can also do practice questions together. So whether or not you actually take this course, I would strongly recommend getting at least a study buddy, if not forming a study group for your exams. So speaking of Sarah, she has very kindly offered, and also Ingrid and the OALA office have very generously paid for the offering of a section 4 webinar with Sarah that is coming up on Tuesday, February 21st from 7 to 9 p.m. EST. It is free for members. Ingrid, can you just clarify that it is also free for BCSLA, AALA, MALA, and also for students? I'm assuming as long as they're student members.
Yes, so anybody can sign up. It's on the OALA website. You have to set up a user account to be able to sign up, but so far I think 25 people have signed up for it. And I would say it's really, we did a little bit of the background logistics in the office, but I would say it's really been arranged more by Jenny and Lyle from their research as to looking for all ways that we can support any Canadian exam takers in this next year to, get through as much of the examination as possible. So if you've got difficulty for any reason on signing up, like you can't get on the website, the best email to use is info@oala.ca. Both Angie, our member services coordinator, and I check that. Angie's usually faster than I am, and we'll get back to you to help.
Thanks, Ingrid. So again, this is free, just as long as you register, and Sarah will be covering study and testing strategies, elaborating much further than some of the tips that Lyle shared earlier, recommended resources, and also materials package. So you will be going through material during this webinar. I'm not sure exactly what Sarah has prepared yet, but I suspect that it will include some practice questions that we'll be going over together, which I think will be really useful. So the QR code to register is up on the screen. And if you're not in the Google group yet, the OALA.L.A.R.E Google group, then I would suggest joining, because there will be a sign up sheet for study groups through this webinar that I will be posting probably the day before this webinar, or maybe the days leading up to this webinar. And that way will help facilitate members who are looking to find a study group, get together with people, and we'll be grouping them by location. So if you would like to meet in person with people, then that is an option that is available to you. Also, I posted in the Google group asking for people to submit their questions regarding Section 4, and I don't think I've seen anyone submit anything yet, but if you do have questions regarding Section 4, to please either reply to that thread in the Google group, or you can email Lyle and I directly, and we will be sharing those questions with Sarah so she can better prepare the webinar and make sure that all of your questions are addressed. Okay, so there's the QR code for the Google group. If you haven't already joined, people also themselves will share their own notes on the group. They'll also look for study groups on their own in the Google group. So it's whatever you make of it. And I also, we try to post updates on the exams as much as possible on there as well. There's also my email and Lyal's email up on the screen if you would like to contact us about any questions regarding the exams, or also even the PDP. I know Lyal especially has been very helpful with people at her office and anyone else who's reached out to her to ask about PDP questions. Okay, that gives us, okay, we have 20 minutes. So we'll open the floor to questions. I can't see the chat, so I don't know, Ingrid or Lyle, I think you've been keeping better track during the presentation, so we could start going through some questions.
I answered a couple of them. I think lots were specific people of just checking a few things. We did put up the link. I know you've got the code for it, but for the Section 4, the one from 2021, I thought that was a great comment. I put up that long HTTPS Zoom link for anybody if that helps, but most likely most of you may find this code easier to get to. And then I think the other, there was a question on if the reading lists will change. We don't know yet, and we haven't seen anything from L.A.R.E. We keep watching for any updates. Normally, anybody that's on who is writing exams with L.A.R.E. will get information directly from them if there are any changes. They also normally remember to also send those to the jurisdiction offices like ours, and we try to update it on our website and let members know. I think all offices have put out a few just update emails to reiterate what L.A.R.E. Has been letting members know in the event they missed the information from L.A.R.E. So do watch there, and we will also be watching to send that out. If we do see information to say there's some great new book that you should buy, certainly for the OALA, we'll buy it and a number of copies and put them in the library, but we haven't seen anything come up as of yet.
If I could clarify, Ingrid, the most recent L.A.R.E. webinar that was hosted, I think maybe a week or two ago, they did emphasize that no new content is being added to the new blueprint, nor is there any content being removed from the new blueprint at this time, as of the time of the webinar. That could always change, and like Ingrid said, we really don't know for sure. But based on that, I would say the current reading list will remain current.
Great. And I saw one person too, who is an OALA member who was having problems joining the L.A.R.E. study group. And I'm going to say to Sakshi, it could just be timing. It's actually Jenny and Lyell on their spare time that have to go into that. So it may just be that you haven't seen their requests yet, but maybe I'll let Jenny and Lyell respond to that if people are trying to sign up for the Google group.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I actually don't know. Do you know about that, Lyell?
I'm just gonna check my portal and see if I have anything. Just give me 1 second.
I'll add that the Google group was started probably, I don't know, it's maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I think before
Right.
I started, managed by associates and kind of passed on. So there's a possibility that something's got missed over time because it's all just volunteers passing it on. So it's maybe helpful to know that people are having a challenge.
Yeah, and to be totally transparent to everyone, I think maybe the past couple years we weren't entirely sure how best to utilize the Google group. Like Ingrid, Lyle, and I have had those conversations before, but now we're trying to post updates regarding the exam more, and we've also noticed members using it more to find study buddies and study groups. So I guess if anyone has any suggestions on other ways we can make use of the Google group and engage more with members, then that would be greatly appreciated. You can email us. Our emails are up on the screen. Also, while Lyell is looking through the portal to see about requesting access to the Google group, I did recently complete section 4. So if you are interested in notes for section 4, please feel free to email me. Again, I just like to stress to make your own notes as well and not rely entirely on other people's notes. But I am happy to share my notes for section 4. And I know that exam in particular is stressing some members out right now because they've already completed section 1. So they're in that boat of trying to complete section 4 before December. The one I wrote before section 4 was section 3. So I also have my notes from that one as well, if people are interested. Unfortunately, I can't seem to find my section 1 notes, so I apologize for that. Otherwise, I would share those. And section 2, I may still have. I would just have to dig around. I've definitely sent it to people before. So if you are looking for someone's notes to reference or use as backup, please feel free to email me.
And maybe I'll ask you guys as well. I think there's also a general, more US-based Google group for L.A.R.E studying, and I don't know if you two have been a part of that at all.
Yes, so that one is much more active, especially since there's a whole 50 states plus Canada's worth of people in the Google group. It is very active. And one thing that L.A.R.E did flag in their webinar last week is that they do monitor that group in the sense of they check to make sure that no misinformation is being spread, and they have noticed misinformation being posted on that group. It's not controlled by L.A.R.E or any jurisdiction in any way. I'm not sure how it was founded, but that is something that you should be aware of if you do go into that group. Please, if you see any information that contradicts L.A.R.E or this presentation, then I would err on the side of caution and make sure to go with L.A.R.E.'s information. And if you're really not sure, you can always email them. But that is something to keep in mind. There are also lots of people who post their notes, resources, find study groups in there as well. So if you are looking for people outside of your jurisdiction to study with, then that's also an option.
There's a question from Kelly, but also Kelly, there were 2 Kelly Kangs pending join requests, so I approved both. I'm hoping one of them is you. But Sakshi, I'm not seeing yours. So if you don't mind sending, or just email me so that, and then
I can try that again.
Okay, and Kelly's asking to go back to section 4 QR code. Can we just circle back to that one?
Does Kelly want
for the
this
registration?
one for the webinar?
Okay.
It's also if you're not able to scan the QR code right now or don't want to right now, registration is available on the OALA website under the Stay Current tab, and then if you click that tab, it's under the, I think it's called Events, Upcoming Events tab, and then you have to scroll down a little bit because it's listed in order of when it was posted, I believe, but it's on that page.
Okay, I got yours, Sakshi.
Yeah, I just sent it. Thank you.
Should be approved now.
And I was wondering, Jenny, if they also meant the QR code for the recorded section 4 as well.
Yes, I wasn't sure which one she meant, so I left this one up for now, and I'll move on to this one. Again, I mentioned earlier, this webinar I found very useful for section 4, so I highly recommend watching it. It's not a short watch by any means, but I think it's worth it. Oh, yes. I think, Ingrid, you already answered Sarah's question, but just in case anyone else is not reading the chat, will the upcoming webinar be recorded? So it won't be recorded, but because Sarah is located in California, it is 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. PST, 7 to 9 p.m. EST. So if you're on the West Coast, it'll be earlier in the day.
That's great. And I know, Jenny, you can't see, I don't see any other questions. People may still just be digesting all the information.
Yes. Especially the newest information about August, October, the free attempts, like that's there's a lot to absorb there.
I just wanted to ask one more thing, like, how will we be paired with other people in, like, for studying together, like in study groups? How would that work?
So let me go back to. So for this specific webinar, which is only covering section 4, we will be posting in the Google group different threads for various locations. So we could have one for Ottawa, one for Toronto, one for Mississauga, one for, sorry, I'm blanking, like Kitchener-Waterloo area, different areas. And there will also, I guess, be people attending from outside the province. So we'll also have to break out threads for those areas as well. But basically, once you're in the Google group and you look for your thread, I think you mentioned that you're located in Toronto. You can find the Toronto thread, and then just basically leave a reply in that thread expressing your interest to join the group for section 4. And then once the webinar is done, we will compile all those emails and email each group to get them connected. But for other sections, I haven't seen that many people post for study groups other than section 4, to be honest. So I would just say, if you are looking for a study group, to join the Google group.
All right. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah,
No
I'll do.
problem. Yeah, join the Google group, and then you can post your own thread looking for a study group.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you go to the on the left-hand side section of that group,
Yeah.
it says conversations, and then you'll see different threads of people posting, for example, section 3 study group Tuesdays, and then that person specified how many people they'd like in the group, like 2 or 3, 4, whatever it may be that's convenient for them, and the timing. So just keep an eye on that.
All
And
right.
you might be able to find somebody to match with, or just start your own thread asking for interest from
All right.
members.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
So just one more thing, it'll be my first time appearing for the exam, and I'm planning to do either second or third section, like you just mentioned that it's the safest choice.
Yes.
So just wanted to know, like, looking at the time that we just have barely 2 months now, what would be the recommendation to go with? Would it be section 2, or like in terms of preparation wise, I'm asking, like, would section 2 require more of time, or section 3? Like, I'm just trying to plan for the exam. So just on a personal experience, what would you recommend?
I think for that, I would recommend going to the breakdown of each exam. So I would recommend referencing this breakdown for sections 2 and 3. And depending on your level of comfort with the amount of topics per exam section, because it really depends on like which section topics you seem more familiar with. And again, you could use the textbooks for each section and cross-reference with this breakdown to see, okay, maybe which one appears to have less reading, which one has topics that you're more comfortable and familiar with. I would look at it that way, because it really depends on the person. Like, I could tell you that I found one section easier than the other, but you might find the complete opposite. So I would look at it that way.
I agree. Thank you. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Thanks.
And I know, Jenny, you're still in the dark on the chat questions, but I think we've responded to all the chat questions. L.A.R.E, do you think there's anything that
I don't
hidden
think
in here?
so. I think most questions were about the timing, registration. So like you mentioned in the chat, Ingrid, if anybody has issues with that registration, to reach out to info@oala.ca. you or Angie can help with that.
I think also I figured out how to open the chat, Ingrid. I just to shout out Kelly Kang. They will be taking sections 3 and 4 in April. If anyone wants to study together, they've left their email in the chat.
That's great. Well, I think it's like 12:57 here. So I guess I really want to thank Jenny and Lyall again for preparing all this information and being able to share it so clearly with people. So I hope that those that are here also found it helpful. And we will have to work with Jenny because it's on her computer. Jenny, I'll have you working with Angie to get it uploaded. And so, but we'll share the link to the recording also with the BCSLA, AALA, and MALA to make sure that anybody can have access through their own jurisdictional websites as well.
Thank you,
Great.
everyone.
That's great. Thanks everybody for